Alexis, Tress, our videographer. G, where are you? Social media manager over there.
All right.
I want to thank every single one of y'all for coming out tonight. Tonight's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to start off with a couple videos, and then Patrick will take it away. Appreciate y'all.
Hi, I'm Patrick Stewart. Now I get to introduce you to Peak Performance Partners. We're a company that's made up of over 150 years of business experience, helping large companies such as Verizon, AT&T, build their brands and their revenues. Also work with privately owned companies, helping scale businesses from startup to over $100 million. We've also built our own organizations and have had some pretty successful exits of those. With business owners, one of the things that we realize is this: you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And we all have blind spots. So what we've done through our organization is we've teamed up with the Alternative Board in Las Vegas, Henderson, and Reno, which is a franchise model where we bring business owners from non-competing industries. We hold a board meeting. As a business owner, who is going to hold you accountable? Who's going to tell you, hey, you know what, that idea is not a good idea? Who's going to help you take you and your organization to a whole nother level? That's what we do in these meetings. And in between meetings, then we meet down with you one-on-one, where we really dive into your organization. We find out, hey, what is your personal vision? Why did you get into business? We also find out, hey, what's your company vision? What's the mission? What is your brand and what's your brand promise? These are things that we want you to be able to answer in a very simplistic manner. The other thing that we do is we help with sales and marketing. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. We currently interact with companies and we sit down with them and attend their monthly business meetings and come up with strategies. Hey, what does your website look like? What's your messaging? What is your social media? Are you using video? We've got our own videographer where we'll come in and actually help you develop your company's commercial, your message to the world of what you are and who you are. Nothing says it more than a great video. Have you ever thought about the term industry leading? There's industry leading organizations, and my question to you is this: are you that? Or do you ever ask yourself, how did they become industry leading? How did they get to where they're at right now? How are they in so many marketplaces? How are they able to grow their top line revenue? How are they able to have so much profit? Those are the questions that we'll start to answer as you interact with us. You're going to see our partners here. We're going to be at the events. Please grab with us, engage with us. Tell us what's going on in your company and in your world. See if we can't help plug you into our community that can help you achieve a dream and be a leader that you never thought was possible. Thanks again for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at some more of our events. You know the true value of your company. You have a formal exit strategy.
Is your management team aligned with you?
Are you burnt out? Do you believe in your mission statement?
Do you know the fair market value of your company?
Do you know your KPI? Can you leave your business for 30 days? Is your operating agreement current?
Are you susceptible to depreciation recapture?
Did a few or maybe all of these questions resonate with you? If they did, you're not alone. We are the trusted advisor for a lot of business owners and business leaders, coming up with action plans and strategic plans in order to accomplish and attack some of these issues. That's what we do.
We do that by putting in proper leadership teams, systems, controls, and procedures, proper financial reporting, operating agreements that properly reflect the operation of business, and an asset protection plan to help you, the owner, in the event of an unfortunate catastrophe or an issue and risk that you are protected.
We help bring business owners together in a safe environment so we can share best practices. And the way we like to look at it is those experiences. Those shared experiences really lead to bottom line results. Hear from some of our business owners on what we help them with.
Well, I joined the board
because I needed to have experts to kind of guide me along the way as I build out my company and have direction as well.
The main reason I joined the board is to learn more how to scale my business and to be more efficient with my system.
One of my mentors that helped me in the business set me straight, and he said, you know, even Michael Jordan's got a coach. So I was like, okay, I'm in, I'm all in.
Because entrepreneurship is so lonely and I'm all by myself in my company, just having somebody to collaborate, 11 p.m. in the morning, at night, 12 a.m., Kevin is always there, so I'm very thankful for that.
To have that direction, to have connections and networks and things of that nature.
It gave me a chance to take a deep inter-perspective look at myself and know that you're on the track, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and these guys are going to help you find that.
As on an island, more or less, and with the team and the board in place, joining peak performance was probably one of the best things I ever did as a businessman.
All right.
What we're gonna do, let's set up these chairs. Come on out here, guys. We got Robert Glaser from BNY Mellon. Give it up for him. And Ryan Blaylock from Snell & Weber.
Don't worry, brother. You're a VIP.
Yeah, VIP.
Hey, gotcha. I have my drink back. Get started.
So it's official. This is officially our 12th. Why do you guys started during COVID? We're like, yeah, that's what we did, and we didn't know any better, so we just kept going. What we've been doing is we do these CEO events because we want to bring business owners in an environment maybe that you can't always ask some of these questions that we're gonna discuss some of the subjects. We bring in industry leading presenters, and today we're going to be talking about exit, succession planning, strategies, and with that we've got Robert Glaser from BNY Mellon. And Robert, if you don't mind kind of giving us the why did we ask you to come up here?
I don't know. That's a question everyone's wondering. So that's actually fair, because I do a discussion on this process, and a lot of people kind of at the end say, well, wait a minute, you're a wealth investment guy. What is your role in this? So I think some of it just kind of stems from my career and kind of how I got here. I actually started out in banking as a corporate banker and spent a lot of time lending money to people like yourselves to help you grow and expand your businesses. I then became a consultant for KPMG, Pete Marwick, and that was a really interesting job. I got a chance to travel the world and work with some of the largest businesses around the world and consulted with them on basically business process. So even though KPMG is one of the largest accounting and audit and tax firms in the world, I was working in the consulting practice and I wasn't doing any of that work. I then spent a stint as a CFO in a couple of middle market businesses before I landed myself back in banking and in private banking. So over the years, I've always been a fan and admirer of anybody that will start and own their own business. I think it's a huge challenge, and I admire and envy you. Somebody once said to me that all bankers are frustrated entrepreneurs, and so here I am, a frustrated entrepreneur who's a big fan of everything that you are doing. So my goal in all of this is really to help all of you understand the issues that come with this, to be prepared, to understand what you would be going through, and in the end have the best possible outcome you have from any transition or transaction you may do.
Awesome. Perfect. And Brian Blaylock from Snell and Lumber.
Thanks. And this is not for that, right? We're wearing this.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, great. If I use this, I'm going to screw this up. So you'll be able to see where we sort of split and come back together. I was born about 2.5 miles from here. There used to be a hospital that is now a restaurant supply store in East Sahara. Eventually our medical records were used to start fires by the homeless people who took the building over. So I'm Vegas born and bred. And like a lot of people who grew up in Vegas, I took sort of a circuitous path. I did all of my schooling here, got all of my degrees at either community college or UNLV. But bottom line, I did very different than Bob. I went to work on the Strip I signed in at 16. I was full-time at the Stardust at 17, and I was a carpenter and a welder, eventually an electrician and a pyrotechnician. But bottom line, I put myself through law school. My last day I was the production electrician at the Excalibur. My last day there was 2 days before I started at my first law firm, and candidly, if they had never closed the Stardust, I'd still be there. People never left the Stardust. If you were lucky enough to get there, the head electric had been there since 1959, head carpenter had been there since 1968, and it's actually out my window every day looking at Resorts World, and I just get a little pissed that didn't work out for me. But my grandparents and my parents were both entrepreneurs. When the Strip started to sort of pull away from me. I'm like, that guy with the Republican Party. I didn't leave the Strip. The Strip left me. But when I was working on the Strip, I actually made more doing that. Just trying not to run into naked people who got paid to exercise every night. So when I came into law, my rule was if I had to go to court, I would just stay on the Strip and just ride it down. I probably would have been unemployed by now, but I would be damned if I was going to be part of the problem. I was an econ major. I find legal fees to be sort of the antithesis of what a capitalist system is supposed to do. It's transaction costs, it's friction, it's crap that I don't want to be a part of. So when I got into this, again, the only people I've ever really, felt close with is our entrepreneurs, and I was lucky enough that I was able to carve a path into it. So my practice focuses almost exclusively on helping entrepreneurs either run their companies and grow their companies or exit their companies. That last part, which we typically refer to as private M&A, I spend about 80% of my time there. The other 20% is helping people who aren't quite there yet. They're still busy, making money and growing and all of that stuff. We're not allowed to say outside general counsel, so don't say that. It's only on the internet, it'll be fine. But we act effectively. We provide the same service as a general counsel would to middle market companies, but we do it in 6-minute increments. And then when companies are ready to sell, that's what we do a lot of. The reason why I have to say I almost do, work exclusively with entrepreneurs is because if you do enough work selling privately held companies, eventually someone will approach you about wanting to buy them. And so I absolutely refuse to work with private equity because it sucks, but I will occasionally take an engagement with a company that is backed by private equity. So, if a private equity fund has a portfolio or a platform company and they're doing tuck-in acquisitions, I will do some buy-side work. So that little piece I do think it's helpful because bottom line, if you only know how to sell something and you don't know what buyers are looking for, you probably kind of suck at this job. So I do just enough buy-side work to hopefully not suck.
Anybody here from private equity? Okay, good.
It was a big gamble. I asked Ricky beforehand. I'm like, is this kind of an ACG thing? And he's no. These are good people. So.
All right. Well, we're gonna get out of the gate running. You guys ready?
We're ready.
What I'd like to know is if you can tell us what is the greatest exit or transition success story that you've been a part of, and why was it so great?
I figured we'd alternate. You want to go first or second on this one?
I'll defer to you.
I would like to go first on. Let's see. I would like to go first on where's the one that we've had to answer before. So sorry, a 9. I will take this one first. So my rule of thumb on this is that. And this is part of the reason why I couldn't be a litigator, right? So litigators have to be totally comfortable with losing, right? Ultimately, the success of what you're doing is in the hands of hopefully a neutral decision maker. But bottom line, litigators live and die with the possibility that no matter how hard they work, they could fail. I can't deal with that. If there's a chance I'm going to lose at something, I just don't play. I am the guy who will cheat at board games with my 8-year-old daughter. It's just I just can't do it. So for me, any transaction that closes is a win, because if my client didn't want to close, they would tell me to stop working, and that's a win too. So answering this question, what I would say is that the transactions that have consistently been the biggest success in the eyes of my clients are the ones where it went smoothly on the first try for a price that exceeded their expectations, right? And what I have found over and over again is that is the product of, planning on the front end and then properly executing at the time of the transaction. Those I've done. We have, most of our deals are in the 8-figure range. We do about one 9-figure deal every 12 to 14 months because we're about to do half our work in this market. And every one of those that goes well, it's a result of those two things: planning in advance and then executing properly.
I've seen a lot of, I take great joy in other people's successes. And I've had a number of clients that have gone through some successful transitions. I'll mention a couple of them. One was somebody I met on a nonprofit board that I served on, and he, at one time we had lunch, and he informed me, a PE firm has approached me about buying our business, and so we were going to probably move forward with that. And being in the line of business I'm in, I'm thinking, oh, super, he's going to have a whole bunch of money, we're going to manage it for him, provide him with estate, tax, financial planning. And he goes, well, we've decided to roll all of our stuff into the private equity. So they didn't take any cash out, they just rolled it all into that deal. And I, at the time, was kind of like, wow, I didn't really know the private equity firm, so I was like, you may want to just take enough off the table to support you in the lifestyle to which you've grown accustomed, let the rest of it roll. He didn't listen to me. So 5 years later, well, first of all, before even that, so as soon as the private equity firm took the deal over, they refinanced the company. So they did some leverage, and he got like $5 million out of that almost immediately. And then they proceeded, I think, to do a second round of refinancing, and he got some more money out. Bottom line, 5 years later, they ended up getting about $100 million. So this was an instance where I would have to say, I am very glad you did not listen to me. It worked out for the best. The other one that leaps to mind was we had some clients that, which is fairly common in a family business, they wanted to pass the business on to their children. And fortunately, before doing that, one of the things you have to think about before you transition a business is net of taxes and costs, what money am I going to get, and is that money going to allow me to live the lifestyle I've grown accustomed to through the balance of my life? And we did that analysis for them, and it kind of turned out, well, transitioning the business to their children wasn't going to give them the money they needed, but they were really interested in making sure their kids had a place in the business. So we were fortunate enough to find a private equity firm that bought their business, that thought enough of the kids, that the kids got a piece of the deal with an opportunity to expand based on how well the business did after the PE firm took it over. And then because of this transaction, the parents ended up with more than enough money to do the things they wanted to do. Again, a lot of successes out there, but those are the two that kind of leap to mind.
All right, thank you. Now let's flip the coin onto the other side. What were ones that weren't so good, and kind of where you were, and why did that happen? Either acquisition, mergers.
You want to go first?
No,
Okay.
please.
And just in truth and disclosure, I want everybody to know, Brian and I actually know each other pretty well. Brian and I serve on the steering committee of a group called Succession Advisors Roundtable, which is kind of a networking education group for all business advisors that are working for people like you. And we talk about these issues and try to help all of our clients be more successful. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting this morning, so Brian is starting his day with me and ending his day with me, which is why he's drinking.
Yes, the sun never sets on my relationship with Bob Glaser.
Those of you that have heard me talk before have heard me say this. The worst transactions I have seen are those that involve taking public company stock as part of the deal. So why is that bad? You're probably sitting there thinking, well, it's a public company, it's liquid, you should be able to get your money out. That is not always the case. There are a whole bunch of companies out there that trade over the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange that do not have enough demand so that you can liquidate the position. So I have seen several people get these kind of offers, and I've only managed to talk one out of it, and they were very grateful that I did. But inevitably what will happen in these transactions is the owners talk to the CEO of the acquiring company, and he says all good things about the company and the stock's going to go up. And invariably what you will find out is those companies are making numerous acquisitions using their stock, so they're putting a lot more shares out into the market when there already isn't a lot of demand for their stock. So inevitably when the newly acquired companies or the owners of those companies try to sell their stock, they flood the market with a lot of stock and the stock price drops. So I have seen somebody who thought they were getting $10 million end up with nothing more than what they got in cash from them, so they lost it all. Most of those deals all went bad. The one folks I talked out of it, they were interested in doing it because at that time, if the acquirer, if you took on 85% of the acquirer's stock, it would be a tax-free transaction. And they were hopeful that, hey, this guy's saying all kinds of great things about the company, so it's not only going to be tax-free, but we're going to appreciate on a larger balance, right? Well, fortunately, I talked them out of it, pointing out similar things to this, and in the end, that company stock not only tanked, the company actually ended up going bankrupt and out of business. So again, it's just one of those things. Do not take stock, even in a public company, unless you've done a lot of due diligence on the acquirer and you have a good understanding. Somebody was even asking me the other day, an accountant I know came to me and said, hey, I've got a client that has like $10 million in this stock, and he wants to know if you guys will margin it because he doesn't want to sell it because he thinks it's going to appreciate. Well, I went and took a look, and this stock had about 50,000 shares a day that were trading, which, trust me, is no float. They had no analysts covering the stock, so there just was no demand for the stock. And it's just like, no, this stock, if we tried to liquidate it, we could tank the stock price very easily just by putting even a portion of the shares out there. So again, do due diligence, ask somebody that really can do their homework for you before you enter into any transaction involving the acquirer's stock.
I think we probably want to move on to the next question because I know we've got a time limit, but I will just add to what Bob said. So I do want to distinguish between two things. If you sell to any company that is backed by private equity or directly to private equity, there is a 99.9% chance they will ask you to roll over a portion of your business. In that context, everything that Bob said about doing your due diligence and everything, all of that still applies. With public stock, there's an added problem. With public stock, it is taxable. So in 99% of private equity deals, when I'm representing a seller, they're going to say, hey, they want us to roll 10, they want us to roll 20, whatever the percentage is, right? And if it can be done on a tax-free basis, and if you believe in what they're doing, there are many cases in which that makes sense. If you are selling to a public company and if you're going to pay tax on stock that you have no cash to pay the tax on, it becomes kind of a triple problem. So again, everything that Bob said with respect to make sure you do your due diligence, that you have confidence in what you're getting is fine. The public company aspect also makes it a potential tax problem. So.
Yeah, and there's also initially you're treated like an affiliated person, so your stock is tied up for a while. There's a variety of other issues you need to be aware of. You can't margin it while it's tied up. So people talk about margining it and getting the cash out, and there's just, again, it's a very complicated matter, and be sure you discuss it with somebody who really knows how to analyze that situation.
A lot of clients that we are talking to, they'll be like, well, we're either too young or we're not ready to sell, we're not thinking of selling, and we're always talking about, well, you need to start thinking about it. what advice would you give those clients that are just kind of like, yeah, we don't really need to think about selling or exit?
So what I would say, and again, I'm just the stupid lawyer, right? But what I would say is that what I've seen in selling, dozens of these companies is that proper exit planning is also usually pretty good business planning. So ultimately, the way I look at it, because again, listen, if I had the tolerance for risk that is necessary to be an entrepreneur, I wouldn't have gone to law school. Law school is a safe choice. I'm a service provider. I bill by the hour. I'm here all week. The problem, so the truth is that if you were going to throw your blood, sweat, and tears, right, and your kids' college fund and everything into this business, and I know there are people around the room who have done this and who are still doing this, and God bless them for doing it. Then the way I look at it is, it's not just what you're getting out of it, right? It's no different than owning a home or any other asset that you hopefully want to appreciate. If for any of us who are lucky enough to own a home, it makes sense to keep up on the maintenance, right? I mean, it makes sense to, if something is leaking, fix it. If something needs to be repaired, repair it. If there is, something about your house that is not functional, I mean, it's not necessarily that you want to sell your house. It's that you want the value of this asset when you're done using it to be as much as possible. So I'm not saying that you have to do everything. I'm not saying that that you can do everything. It's probably impossible. But most of the things that make your company attractive to others will also pay benefits to you. So why the hell not do it? Does that make sense? That's the stupid lawyer's take.
So one of the things I talk to business owners about is I will usually pose to them the question, how many of you have a transition plan? And typically, very few, if any, do. And then the follow-up question is, well, why don't you have a transition plan? And the answers are what you would expect. Well, I'm young, I'm having fun, I'm not interested in selling my business, so why would I do that? So right now, there's two reasons I give people why you should think about transition. Exactly what Brian said. Right now, it's estimated that anybody in the room a baby boomer? Any baby boomers in the room?
Anybody?
It kind of goes out somewhere around 44,
46 to 64 usually. That's when the pill was invented.
Yeah. So right now it's estimated baby boomers own about 65% of private business. And baby boomers are now getting into their 70s. You're starting to see them age out. So whether we baby boomer, we think we're going to live forever. The reality is at some point we're going to get tired, we're going to have health issues, probably ready to transition. And so that group needs to think about it because they're aging out, and that's the plan. But what about young people? Well, the reason somebody who is young, is still energetic, loves their business, and just wants to keep going needs to think about it is $1 trillion in private equity money trying to find a deal. I talk to investment bankers all the time that are talking about how they're trying to find people to sell their business. So what happens, all of you sitting here, anybody here received an unsolicited offer to sell your company? Yeah. I mean, that is a pretty regular, and trust me, I talk to investment bankers that what they're doing is they're getting like copies of all the people that got PPP loans, and they're using that as a Rolodex and calling all of those people saying, hey, you interested in talking about getting your company sold? And what will invariably happen is one or more of you are going to get an unsolicited offer where somebody's going to come in and say, I want to give you X amount of dollars, which is more money than you imagined having, and it's going to intrigue you and you're going to want to do it. But I will tell you, you're not ready. Your business is not attractive, it is not sellable, and there's a lot of things you probably need to do to be prepared before you go through this. So again, as Brian said, doing the things that make you attractive and ready for the transition are going to add a lot of value to your business and are good business sense along the way.
What are the biggest misconceptions on an exit plan?
Go ahead.
I would say there's a couple of things. One is, I usually talk about the ugly baby principle. Is anybody familiar with the ugly baby? All of you as business owners have a business, you're probably doing well, you're making money, and you think it's a great thing. But trust me, your baby is not attractive to other people like it is to you. So there's a lot of things you need to understand about what potential acquirers, whether it's a private equity firm or a strategic acquirer, what they are looking at to determine what is truly valuable and desirable for them in doing the acquisition. Also, it's not only kind of where am I, how ready am I think another misconception is, well, how long is it going to take me to get to a position where I am ready and attractive? This isn't something you can do in the next 6 months. I mean, if you do, you could, but you're not going to maximize your ultimate outcome. It's just a lot more work, and it'll take you 2 to 3 years really to do all the things you need to do to maximize yourself as far as readiness and attractiveness to potential buyers.
Do you want to jump to the next one? Like I said, I know you've got a kind of a long list.
And what we're going to do is I've got a list of questions, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. So if you have a question, write it down, think about it.
And please, if Brian and I drift into industry lingo or acronyms or something, please pause us and say, what?
Yeah. So what is the most unconventional exit strategy that you've ever been a part of?
So, Bob said before this, and it's absolutely true. I mean, every deal is unconventional in some way. So it's trying to decide, what is the most unconventional. I will say that the deals that I've been on where I say I hope I never do this again are the ones that result from a partner dispute, right? So we call them sometimes business divorces. It's the kind of the ugly side of M&A, and it's unconventional for me because I frigging hate doing them. So it happens. When it happens, it's really, I mean, absent certain obvious characteristics, it's not that different than splitting up a marriage, right? But there's assets to be divided up. There are people who get stuck in the middle. So for me, that's unconventional because it's as close as we come to outright fighting. The way that I always explain to new associates what the difference is between the corporate and securities team and the commercial litigation team is that our clients and their side's clients effectively want the same thing, right? So it's not that I don't argue. I argue all damn day, right? But the way I argue is what happens when two people decide to go to Disneyland, right? They've decided to go to Disneyland, and now we can argue about when we're going to go and how we're going to get there and what we're going to listen to, what we're going to do when we get there, what we're going to eat, all of that garbage. And I argue about that all day. The second that the two people in the car don't want to go to Disneyland, it's not my client. I can introduce you to 100 litigators who can handle it, but it's not me. And so business divorce is as close as I get to having a client who wants something different. But again, the reason why I'm in it is because they do want to split up, but by God, they want to leave the other side bleeding. So that for me, it's the same documents, but it's a hell of a lot messier. And candidly, I mean, if it happens to any of you, then my sympathies in advance. But I've been divorced once. I will say I would rather go through another divorce than one of these business divorces that I've negotiated. So.
All right, Bob. What is the most important part of an exit?
You gave me the questions in advance. I should be prepared for this. So. The most important part. I would actually say the most important part first is that you are ready to transition. And I don't just mean... well, what I typically tell people, so I have accountants and lawyers that call me and they say, hey, my client just got an unsolicited offer for this. Will you kind of give them the run through on what to expect in this process? And the first thing I tell people is, one, you need to make sure you have enough money after taxes and net of costs. And the second thing is, are you ready to transition? Because when great, you have a whole bunch of money, but now what are you going to do with yourself? I mean, Fortune 500 CEOs who leave their job are miserable. They're rich, but they're miserable. All these people they thought were friends don't call them anymore. They don't have anything to do other than just play and relax. And for some people, that's not satisfying. So again, I think it's important that you understand what you're going to do with yourself afterward. But I also tell everybody, look, just because you receive an offer and it seems like a lot of money, don't do that if it's not the right time for you. Improve your company, get it ready for the transition, but then do it on your own schedule and when it's the right time for you.
Perfect. Brian, what if I want to go out fast? What do I do?
Hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Okay, if you, I mean, bottom line, you hear different numbers, and part of the reason why you hear different numbers, as to the number of companies that do not successfully sell, right? And it's always a majority. It's usually a super majority. The reason why you hear different numbers is because they measure it differently. It's like the unemployment rate, right? You're only unemployed if you are seeking work. Once you stop looking, you fall out of it. It's the same thing. We say that 75%, 80% of businesses that go to market don't sell. That number's a little bit misleading because some people, as Bob said, if the seller gets cold feet, the transaction didn't close, but it's not because we didn't necessarily accomplish the owner's objectives, right? The owner's objective in that case was to stay in. But bottom line, all of this, if you are trying to get out fast, I want nothing more than for things to go well for you. It often doesn't. So.
And I was actually, somebody today, and it might have been, is Oksana still here?
No.
Don't mean to call you
She
out.
left. She did.
But I was investment bank.
I told her I wouldn't say anything.
Okay.
Cade,
by the way, Oksana's not here.
Cade left too. They left together. I'm not saying anything else.
But Oksana.
This is all you guys are talking about.
Yeah, Oksana is an investment banker, and she told me this morning that one of the things she sees is people just have too high of expectations is what they're going to get for their company. And if you sell it fast, you're going to get a lot less. I mean, that's a fire sale. There is no fast in this business. So if you got to get out quick, plan on not getting value for your company. So.
And where do they start? If you want to sell your company, where do you recommend they start?
Is it my turn?
It is.
I think it's a good idea for you to meet with someone who has a designation like a SEPA, or which is a certified exit planning associates. There's multiple organizations out there that accreditate people, and you want to talk to someone who has a good knowledge of what this process is. And ultimately, you're going to need someone who can help you understand what areas do I need to improve on? How can I make my business more attractive? How do I make my business so it's ready to be sold? What can I do to add value? And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a pretty long process. Even if you're a well-run business, it's probably going to take you 18 months to 2 years to really get yourself to where you want to be, so you're going to get the best value and the best possible outcome. So again, it's getting evaluation with where you are. It's going through and understanding how your business compares to best practice in your industry. So here's where you are, here's where best practice is. You've now created a gap. You do a gap analysis, you make a list of all of these, and that becomes your plan going forward for closing those gaps and creating value in your business. But again, it's a long, complicated process. So having someone, I mean, you guys, if you're lucky, you'll go through transition once. Some of you who are really lucky may go through it 2 or 3 times. There are some people who are kind of serial entrepreneurs. Brian and I see these kinds of things, different people every week, on and on. So again, you want someone who can draw from that experience and help you make your way forward in the best possible way.
And Brian kind of said something earlier, a company that is set up for transition or sell, it's actually the most fun company to run.
Yeah, no, you get your weekends back. Hopefully they send you profits at the end of it, but it's a lot better.
All right, so and we kind of addressed this a little bit earlier, but what should I do if I get an offer to sell or merge when I wasn't expecting?
So this is actually the subject of a separate presentation that we've done, and so I'll keep this answer as brief as possible because this can easily fill a half hour. It will not, I promise. But bottom line, there are a number of things you should do if you get an unsolicited offer, right? You should immediately, sort of decide who is, on your team, right? What advisors are going to advise you on this. Spoiler alert: if it's not your CPA, change your CPA. Who's inside the tent, who, if anyone, inside the organization is allowed to know it. Again, spoiler alert, it's not everyone. There should be a small group of people who you can trust with this. It might be so small that it's just you. I hope that's not the case, but it happens. There are a ton of other things to do. They will always refer to it as a non-binding term sheet, non-binding LOI. If it has a signature block, something in there is binding. I haven't seen it, so I don't know which provision, but there is no reason to sign the damn thing unless something in there is binding. So a true non-binding term sheet, no signature block. That's how you know it's not binding. But I will say, a non-binding term sheet or LOI with a signature block, we're not saying that the whole thing's LOI. It requires some careful reading to know. It's, again, usually confidentiality, exclusivity, fees, all of those boring provisions that are way below and less important than the top provision, which is not binding, which is I'm going to give you this many dollars, right? So be careful of quote unquote non-binding LOIs. But then finally, and most importantly, I will say, if it is important or if it is unusual, put it in the damn LOI. And to help you remember this, I don't know, we were not given access to PowerPoint, and I hate what this is. If not, I have a bigger version. Anyone? No? Sorry, this is a slightly bigger version. This lamp Christmas in the damn LOI. And the reason for that is that the high point of a seller's leverage is the split second before the seller signs. Once you sign an LOI, it is a race to hold on to as much as possible before you get to closing. So if it's important, if it's unusual, yes, sir?
What's an LOI?
Letter of intent. Thank you. Term sheet. Basically, it is a document. It is a what the buyer is saying when the buyer provides a letter of intent or a term sheet, the buyer is saying is, if what we think we know about your company is true, we would be willing to pay you X. That's the purpose of it. And again, there will be some binding provisions, but bottom line, when I'm representing a seller, I'm going to say, remember this lamp. And the reason why is this lamp, for any of you, and if any of you hasn't seen the movie, you can just tune out for about a minute and a half. But for the rest of you, this movie, like a significant portion of the story was driven by this stupid friggin' lamp, because what I would, and this is a critical miscalculation on the part of this family. Ralphie's dad entered a trivia contest. He won a major award, and they shipped him this lamp. He put this lamp in the front window. His wife did not appreciate this. I would submit to you the time to have argued about this goddamn lamp was before he entered the trivia contest, okay? Because there was no emotional involvement. There was no risk of damage to their relationship, okay? If the conversation had gone, what are you doing? I'm entering a trivia contest. What can you win? I could win $1,500. Yeah, but you're probably not going to. What else could you win? I could win a leg lamp. What are you going to do with the leg lamp? I'm going to put it in the damn window. No, you're not. Put the pencil down. You're not putting a leg lamp, so don't bother entering it. At that point, if he does enter the contest and he wins the leg lamp, wife is on record. You're not allowed to put the damn thing in the window. We don't have to worry about lying about who broke it. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's the same thing with the LOI. If it's important or unusual, this is both, bring it up as early as possible. Fight about it as early as possible. You're not invested. You haven't paid for any of my time. You haven't consulted with Bob very much yet. Get it the hell out of the way as early as possible. So important, unusual, in the LOI, please.
One couple of things I'll tell you about an unsolicited offer, and everybody that's heard me talk before will echo this. I will tell you, one offer is no offer. You can't do a transaction with just one person because you have no leverage. There's no horse race. They will just offer whatever they think is right, and you don't have a basis for comparison. I was actually just talking with an investment banker I know He's working with a company that has a $3 million EBITDA, 3 to 4 times multiple, so it's worth 9 to 12. The buyer came in and basically said, well, you have this cost structure, but we have all these other costs we're going to add, so we're going to knock about 1/3 of your EBITDA out. So they're basically saying we're reducing the value of your company by 1/3 because of the way we do things, and they have no place to go because there's no competition. Always have 2 horses to make it a competition. You'll get better price, you'll get better terms on the sale. And even more so, I think, I would say, get a good investment banker and do a controlled auction. Somebody that really can do a good job, because they'll start with hundreds of people, whittle it down, finally get at least 3, 4, maybe more interested, and again, you're going to get a much better outcome for what you're doing.
And I will give you one more example on Bob, just because it's bad to go from 12 to 9. That's bad.
Can you say what EBITDA is again?
Earnings before interest, taxation, depreciation, and amortization. So you take your net income, you add back certain non-cash concepts, and often that is the basis for a transaction, for an enterprise value.
So it's an estimated cash flow from your business.
Yeah, but as bad as it is to go from 12 to 9, Bob and I actually worked together on a deal. It was not in Nevada, so just to spare you that guessing game, but it was priced at just over $100 million, and again, great company. Buyer and seller did not have a second offer, which I never understood. When we went into it, I never understood. They had some sort of explanation. It didn't hold up. Sorry?
Hold up where?
Yeah, well, we're getting there. So, yeah, the explanation never made sense to me. It especially didn't make sense to me when what happened next. 3 weeks before closing, the buyer said, hey, sorry, we've got to lower the price to $80 million. And don't get me wrong, I haven't lost any sleep for this family who left with only $80 million. But it was big enough to trip Hart-Scott-Rodino filings. So that means that each side is required to make certain filings with the federal government to ensure that the transaction is not going to, impede the market's ability to compete, right? You don't always get to see the other side's HSR filings, but again, I'm the one that cheats at board games. We got a copy of their side's HSR. So after they had told our client, sorry, $80 million, that's it, take it or leave it, we're done. They valued the transaction at 110 on the government filing. So they just straight up, it was generally just, yeah, we offered to pay you 100, we're valuing at 110, we're going to offer 80 and play hardball 3 weeks before closing. We closed at 80. So don't do that.
Patrick, clarification, this was a public company?
Private? I mean, wait, the seller or the buyer?
Wow. Was it done?
Seller or the buyer?
Was the seller private?
Yes. So if a transaction, it's a great question. So if a transaction of a certain size as a private company, you are still required to make a public filing. The good news is, if you're willing to let the waiting period expire in due course, they don't disclose your financial details. I have not yet found a seller who will let the waiting period expire naturally. So if you want to do expedited termination of HSR, they do disclose the parties. No financial information, but they do disclose the parties. If you get bought by a public company, and if the transaction is material enough, they will disclose the economics. That didn't happen in this case. But yes, it's the price of success. If you get big enough, there's more work to actually close. Closed at 80, and then was valued at 110. I have not heard from that client since. I don't know why.
So let me tell you a quick converse story. An accountant that we know had a client, got offered $7.5 million for his company, unsolicited offer. The client informed the CPA. The CPA said, look, let's sit down with a few people and talk about this. We had the one offer is no offer, suggested, look, do a controlled auction with an investment banker doing this, and the guy's like, okay, I'll do that. He goes back to the people that made him the offer, and they go, look, you want to do that, it'll be disruptive to your business, so we'll give you $10 million and we'll call it a day. Some people might have said, wow, I thought $7.5 million was more than I was ever going to have. 10, that's great, I'm going to take the deal. This guy, luckily to him, it proved what we were saying, that there's probably some value in there he wasn't aware of. So he did get an investment banker, went through the whole process, did the controlled auction. So 7.5 to 10, guess where he ended up? $25 million. Now, I'm not going to tell all of you, you're going to end up in the same place, but again, there's a right way to do it that's going to maximize your outcome and give you the best value for your company. So just remember that story. One offer is no offer.
All right, so the last question, and we're going to open it up to the group here. How do I get the most out of my sale?
I think you just answered that.
A little bit, but
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into that. I have a slide that shows it's kind of readiness issues and then attractiveness issues.
Yeah.
And there are dozens of things on those slides. So attractiveness is things like, do you have audited statements? Do you have a formal management team? Do you not have concentrations in your receivables? Do you have diversity in your suppliers? There's just a variety of things that make the company attractive to a potential acquirer. Readiness is things like, are things in written form and signed? Do you have patents? Do you have copyrights? Do you have trademarks? Do you still have the documents and you know where they are? There's just a variety of things that make you attractive and ready. So it's a long list of things for you to review. Again, gap analysis, where are you, all the things you need to do. And then in the end, one offer is no offer. Again, you want to have as many offers as you can to make sure you get the best value. So there's a slide that I show in the little presentation. So if you're a well-run company, depending on what industry you're in, you get so much value. And then if depending on size, you can get even more of a multiple of whatever your EBITDA is. So one of the things I point to people are, so if you sold your company for 25 million, you're gonna get 4 times. A private equity firm that takes a bunch of companies like you, rolls them all together, even if they made no improvement in the operation, they could probably get another 3 times just by putting it all together and selling it to somebody else. And then on top of that, if you do all the things we're talking about and improve the overall quality of your operation, you can add another 20 to 25% to your purchase price by having a company that is attractive and ready to be sold.
perfect. All right, questions? Who's got a question? Ted, you got a? Not yet. Not yet?
You forgot it.
Yes, please.
How often is retention of employees or key employees consideration for these kind of sales?
It
Did you
depends.
hear the question? Often a retention of employees, the consideration of the sale.
So it is often the case that retention of at least certain key employees is a condition to the sale. And one of the things that good investment bankers will immediately ask any potential sell-side client is which if any employees can you not maintain this level of profitability if one of these people walk out, and more importantly, what have you done to lock them up, right? So it is rarely the case, with possible exception of certain industries that come to mind, it's rarely the case that it's a condition that you keep all of your employees. It's very commonly a condition that, if you've got a sales team that is just killing it, you are probably going to, don't be surprised when they require you to get your vice president of sales locked up, right? If you've got the secret sauce on logistics, you're probably going to need to lock up, your VP of logistics. And to do that, that's why smart bankers ask that on the front end. To do that, there are a variety of things you can do. You can, for example, make them a partner. Please don't make them a partner. You can enter into contractual arrangements whereby they will receive either a transaction bonus, a stay bonus, or both. You can do all of these things. You have to do them right? I know that there are probably people in here who have never worried too much about what their contracts say, and I completely respect that point of view. Okay, my dad was an entrepreneur, my grandpa was an entrepreneur. I guarantee that neither one of them ever bothered with a stupid lawyer, and I'm aware of that. I feel that judgment every day. But don't screw this up. If you are going to say to a buyer, no, I've already taken steps to lock up the VP of sales. He has to stay with you for a year, otherwise he doesn't get his $750,000. And by the way, I'm already paying that, so one less thing for you to worry about. Have that done. Have it done right. Have it done before the buyer asks.
So retention agreements should be tied to performance metrics, longevity. Also just not developing a massive coke habit. You can make it as specific as need be. But bottom line, most of the time, if the buyer is either in or out. The buyer will tell you right away through diligence. Is this someone? Are there people who I need? Have you locked them up already? Do I need to make arrangements? And if they have to make arrangements, it's not that a buyer won't do that. It's just often they will do it at your cost, right? Well, I was going to give you $10 million, but I just had to spend $100. I just had to spend $1 million on retention bonuses. So
I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. And now you're arguing about whether it's before or after the multiple, all that BS. That's why, bottom line, to increase your likelihood of success, lock down the ones that you know the buyer's going to want.
And as far as employees, you need to think about a communication plan as to how and when you're going to start sharing what's going on. Employees are a lot smarter than we think they are. They start seeing suits and a bunch of unknown guys walking in with briefcases and walking out with all kinds of paper. They know something's going on.
When you make some more academic and stuff too, depending on the size of your business, you've got to let people go as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Wait. And Tracy, will you just introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are?
Hi, I'm Tracy Ewick, and I am president of TG HR Consulting.
And Tracy also started the day with us. So.
That's right.
Oh, she did? Good. And she's still here, didn't sneak out.
Hang in there.
She's always drinking.
Yes, I've been a 6. I own Exclusive Chefs. And my question is, I don't own a restaurant, I'm in hospitality industry, but my business is more client-based. So how do you quantify a list of clients?
I'll let Bob jump in on this, but a lot of it depends on the extent to which you can reliably transition those clients, right? And I was trying really hard not to use that word because it's taken on new and exciting meanings in the last few years. But if you can successfully move your client relationships to a buyer, then you've got a solid argument for monetization, right? But if one of the challenges we sometimes have with practices where it's effectively a book of business is the buyer really only wants to pay on results, if at all, right? So what we've seen in the past, at least what I've seen, and again, Bob's experience may be different, is that sometimes the purchase price will be up to X depending on how many of these clients are still doing business with us in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months. So but that's what we're really talking about. It's to what extent can this increase the buyer's, the buyer's bottom line? And often that's the function that they're willing to pay you.
I'm not familiar with your business. Couple things leap to mind. Buyers want to know, they kind of put it in the characterization of, do you actually own your clients? Meaning, are you doing repeat business? Are you dealing directly with them and things like that? Now, I don't know your business, but I'll just make some assumptions here. So you're a chef. So if I hired you to come to my house, it's probably because I think you're a marvelous chef. So people that their brand is too much around just them, you run the risk that people are like, well, your business is you, and when you leave, what do I have? Now, you may have a different model, and so it's just the reputation of the firm, but that's what you really want to create, is a reputation of the firm, and to be able to show you own your clients and you're getting a lot of repeat business from your clientele, because then they start to see value in your client list.
All right, Ken. Hey, what's the average timeline for to complete a sale, and is there such a thing as speeding up the process?
No, please, go ahead.
So this is the terrible lawyer answer, it depends. So if a client comes to me, and this happened today, right? Client emailed me a bullet point list of the terms on which they're planning on selling their heavy equipment company. I have done a couple of transactions with this client. I know they have their stuff together, and so I am quite confident that I can get that deal closed by October 1. If someone I had never worked with before came to me with a bullet point list of terms, I would never in a million years promise October 1. So, and I'm still not going to promise it, but I would start managing their expectations toward November, God willing, by year end, that kind of thing, because it entirely depends on how ready you are, how serious your buyer is. I know by working with this client in the past that I'm not even going to be brought in until they have already checked to make sure that this buyer is for real, has money, has done this before, they run their companies. Again, this is the third company I've sold with them. I know there won't be a hang up there because there just isn't. But honestly, if you are just in the early discussions, it's probably better to say, it could easily take upwards of 6 months to a year if you're in the early discussions, and if it's kind of your first rodeo. If you have not yet started planning, and I'll leave this to Bob, it obviously can take up to a couple years to get ready. If, on the other hand, you've done this a few times, and if you've got your stuff together, and it's just, hey, here's the LOI, and nobody's going to play any games, and both sides really want to get this done, I I don't like doing it. I have closed a deal in as little as 50 days. It was a rough 50 days. My associate almost quit, but we got it done because we had to.
All right.
Hi, my name is, over here, Gina Lofton. I own Lofton Sports. We provide luxury sports and entertainment experiences for SoFi Stadium that owns the LA Chargers and LA Rams. So I have 60 seats for both teams on the VIP and club seats, and as well as suites. So my question is related to what if in the next year or 2 years I want to sell and exit and only sell a partial set of the seats. So for example, maybe I want to sell the away side or the home side for the Chargers, and keep the home side for the Rams. And there's something that's called a Series LLC, and being able to take some of those assets and put them into a Series LLC and then sell them off. So do you have any experience with that? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, did you want to? So Series LLC, Delaware came up with this a while back, and it actually started with mutual funds and other financial instruments, right? The idea was Series LLC effectively allows you, if I don't know, I believe if you're looking at me, I don't actually fish very often, but if you go fishing, they have these things like called tackle boxes, and they will have plastic trays with compartments, and that's sort of the visual representation of what Series LLC was. The idea is instead of having to form multiple, like forming a new entity for each fund, we can take certain assets, certain liabilities, certain owners, compartmentalize it and have them within the same LLC, right? That's been expanded a lot into things like real estate. It's not that it doesn't work, and it's not that we don't do it. It's just that, bottom line, the reason why it made sense for mutual funds is because of the shocking amount of compliance that a mutual fund needs to do for each of its entities. So by being able to compartmentalize its asset groups and its owner groups, they were able to bring all of those into one entity and reduce their compliance burden. For 99% of the people we meet with, the only difference between having a Series LLC and having 2 or 3 LLCs is the $500 a year it costs to maintain an LLC for the state of Nevada. To save the $300 to $500 per year to keep it adds a heck of a lot of complexity. It adds a certain degree of uncertainty. To save $500, I mean, I'm not necessarily for everybody in this room, but for the people I don't like, I'm $460 an hour. It's like by the time we're done talking about a Series LLC, we could have paid for your first regular LLC. So it's not that we don't do them, but the upside for the types of person who uses the Series LLC is not usually there for something like what you're talking about. What you're talking about, which makes perfect sense, is, hey, I've got these assets in one entity. Might make perfect sense to put those into other entities so that you can either sell off a group of them or maybe sell off 50% in a group of them, or you can do all of that. And it's not that you can't do it with a Series LLC. It's just that, and this is anecdotal, and I'm not trying to make fun of any bankers, but like, it's even money. If you walk into most commercial banks, it's even money whether the person you're dealing with is going to understand the difference between Series A of LLC versus whereas all of them will understand X LLC, Y LLC, Z LLC. You'll have different EINs. You'll have different organizational documents. So I'm not trying to talk you out of it, but I'm just saying, if it's just to save a few $100 a year in filing fees, I would typically say, eat the few $100 in return for the certainty that anybody you deal with is going to know what the hell you're talking about. I hate anytime one of my clients has to spend their time explaining a legal mechanism to the service providers they're dealing with. It never goes well for me.
All right. Another question? Dennis.
What's the best way to handle it? They're looking to buy you just to dump the competition.
I'm sorry, what was I didn't hear.
If they want to buy you to get rid of the competition.
Say that out one time.
If they want to buy you out to get rid of the competition.
I mean, it depends on what they're offering, right? I mean, at a certain price, I mean, I'll sell you damn near anything on me. I mean, if they're willing to pay enough to take you off the market and it's interesting, then really what we're talking about is, are there risks? What risks are associated with selling to a competitor? Again, it's obvious there are, right? Surviving due diligence when selling to a competitor is terrifying, right? One of my biggest clients right now is entertaining a direct transaction with a competitor. I've sort of begged them to bring in an intermediary to manage that process. They're not listening yet, so we're just gonna take it day by day. But that's where there's risk. If again, I'm assuming that they're offering enough that you're interested. If that's the case, then you just have to be even more careful because no smart buyer, no buyer that we're working with is going to buy you unless they are able to complete some level of confirmatory diligence, right? They need to make sure that what they think they know about your company is actually true. And that process, the process is sketchy as hell with anyone. It's especially sketchy when you're dealing with somebody who, if you give them access to this information, right, they can, they now have the secret sauce. That I probably should have used something different in light of what you do, but whatever, my bad.
All right.
Yeah.
One more question? Wait, you gotta get to hear that German accent.
So if you have a seller that maybe one of the partners is younger and he wants to work for the company that buys him, and there's 3 different companies and one of them is a good fit. He thinks, okay, that's a company I want to work for another 10, 15 years. How much of a premium or deduction would you give the person to companies that he doesn't like that much, but he would get more money from? How much is that worse if you get bought by a company where you would then be happy working for the next 10, 15 years, but take less money?
Yeah, I don't have any anecdotal or even statistical info on that. I think that's kind of a personal thing. I mean, and I think that you get into structures like that too, like we'll give you X and then you have the potential to earn a percentage of whatever we do in growth or whatever measure in the future. So some of that just comes down to money versus happiness kind of thing. It's hard. I don't have a sense of like how many people do that or don't. Most of the ones I'm in, people are greedy and always try to maximize their outcome in what they're doing. I have seen people, this isn't really the same, I have seen a company that took a significant haircut. There were a couple of brothers that ran a fast food business and they sold it to the franchisor, and the value of the company, they all agreed, was $120 million. They took a haircut, and they're only in a few states around here. They took a haircut to $100 million to put in their sales agreement, an agreement that they're going to keep all their employees for at least 5 years. So these guys kind of did the $100 million is enough money for us, and we're very concerned about all these people that have worked for us loyally over the years, and we want to take care of them. So slightly different thing, but again, that's all personal. I mean, it's just individualized, and how do you feel, and what makes you happy, so what are you comfortable doing, so.
Perfect, all right. Well, once again, I want to thank Robert Glaser from BNY Mellon and Brian Blaylock from Snell and Bummer. They were also our sponsors for tonight's events for the appetizers, so if you guys would help me give them a round of applause. Questions. If you guys need their contact information and you miss them, we'll be more than happy to give it to you. I also want to introduce Eunice Verduzco. She's from the Sterling Desert. When you guys were signing in, you were also entering to win a 90-day membership here. So the winner is
Lori Catton.
All right, Lori, congratulations. All right, so continue to stay. We've got the place for all night now.
Thank you. Can I have some water?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
No, that was good. You
Thanks, Bob.
have a different perspective.
Thanks. I'll trade you. This one's done. Thank you, sir.
I saw you up in Reno a couple months ago.
Oh,